morning, Edward.
Hi.
Guys, we're going to go ahead and start. We are a couple minutes behind. Mariana is going to begin the presentation today. I wanted you to know that she has been a high school educator for 20 years. She has been a prison minister and coordinator for the Alternatives to Violence Project. She's an author, poet, and playwright. And she's part of Cohort 15, which makes her especially a part of us. She holds a BA from Vermont College and an MA from Goddard College. Her lifelong passion is to help young people find their transforming power, particularly in the field of writing. Mariana is going to share poetry with us and some of herself.
Yes, I'm working.
Good morning.
How are you, Lawrence?
Good morning, Lawrence.
So how this is going to be structured is I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got into poetry as a form of reflection, briefly go over some research, and the large part will be sharing some of my poetry that has come out of this process. I teach currently in a school that I've taught for the past 18 years that is greatly diverse, has a 75% poverty rate, and is deeply struggling in many areas. I was hired in 1999 under a grant to reduce class size. Unfortunately, because of the schedule, I was hired late in the year and no one wanted to actually change their classes. So I was kind of put in this little closet-sized room with 5 desks and a board. And they decided to pull out the most difficult students and give them to me to teach. My very first student was Kevin, and I will say that the names have been changed to protect their privacy. And Kevin was a selective mute, which means that he could talk, but he chose not to. Not only didn't Kevin speak, he refused to communicate with me in any way or follow any of my directions. So here I was, a brand new teacher, with this student who would sit and stare at the board for 80 minutes every day. I called his father and to discuss the situation, and his father asked me, "Does he sass you?" And I said, "No, he doesn't speak to me at all." And his father said, "Then I don't want to hear from you again." So here I was. So I decided that I was going to do what I was hired to do, and I taught. And that's what I did. So Kevin wasn't my only student that year. I was given about 20 students, all who were reading at the 3rd grade level or lower. This was 11th grade. And I was expected to get them to take and pass the 11th grade regents. So since I did so well that first year, and that first means that I kept them out of the hallway basically, I earned the assignment of teaching in the alternative education classroom. It was a large classroom at the end of the hall, far away from all the other classrooms. And all the children who could not somehow stay in a regular classroom were put in this room. I had 2 teenage prostitutes who were active prostitutes. One was a cocaine addict. I had another selective mute who was, if he was touched, even by accident, he would throw things, desks, chairs, things like that. I had another boy who was sent to conversion therapy by his parents to change him from gay to straight. And he came back so mentally disturbed that he would scratch his face and mumble to himself constantly. He would write in his journal that he deserved to die. He was one of 2 students in that classroom who were on suicide watch, and they couldn't be left alone. They needed escorts to go to lunch and to the bathroom. Another boy had been in a school fight the previous year, and his head had been slammed repeatedly against the banister, and he had lost his right eye. He never spoke above a whisper in class, and I was to discover during our first year together that he had been given the date rape drug during his recovery and woke up in the bed of a neighborhood man naked. Their lives were indescribable horrors of abuse and neglect. One girl arrived one morning with handprints around her neck where her father had tried to strangle her. My students were often drunk or stoned. However, school was the only place they were safe, warm, and fed. And just like Kevin, I taught them. But while I was these students' teachers, I was also a human being going through my own personal struggles, trying to emotionally process daily the experiences I was going through. I became a very good teacher of difficult students, but nothing in my teacher education, professional development, or evaluations told me what to do with the impact these students were having on my life. What do you do with the residual emotions as a human being when a student tells you that she was raped by her mother's employer and is afraid to say anything because it is the only job her mother could find? They are in the country without documents, and she was afraid of being deported. I did report the rape, but how do I kept questioning myself, how do I process the daily human suffering I was witnessing, most of which I could do nothing to alleviate? Parker Palmer, the author of Courage to Teach, writes, "When we enter the conversation about teaching not through the door marked how to do it, but through the one marked the human condition, we discover a new discourse, a world that will challenge, but also reward us if we are willing to engage what we find there." I knew I had to change the way I thought about myself in the classroom. I was becoming a font of scholarly wisdom. I read everything on how to teach the students. I'd been to conferences and understood how to structure the classrooms. I had, however, learned nothing about myself as a human being who was teaching at-risk students. I was clearly becoming, as Patricia Jennings and Mark Greenberg call, quote, emotionally exhausted, end quote. They also write, quote, emotionally exhausted teachers are at a risk of becoming cynical and callous and may eventually feel they have little to offer or gain from continuing and so drop out of the teaching workforce altogether, end quote. The last thing I wanted to be was cynical and callous, but I knew I was beginning to feel that I had little to offer these students. I contacted my former advisor from Goddard College, Ken Bergstrom, and he encouraged me to develop a reflective practice. Shushma Patil writes, quote, "A reflective practice can be an important tool in practice-based professional learning settings where individuals learn from their own professional experiences rather than from formal teaching or knowledge transfer. What is important about reflection throughout our practice is that we are not just looking back at our past actions and events, but rather we are taking a conscious look at the emotions, experiences, actions, and responses." She also makes clear, quote, that there is no one right way to do this, end quote. So I understood that I'm not just a teacher in the classroom, I'm a human being who arrives in the classroom with my own set of paradigms about what education should look like and how we as the teacher should act in the classroom. I also arrived in the classroom as a human being who has outside problems and relationships. Teachers have dreams, hopes, and desires of their own that they hope to be nourished and cultivated. Reflection allowed me to challenge and understand myself in new ways and help not only my professional responsibilities, but my personal life as well. I first tried journaling, and while I felt I could pour myself out in a journal, it didn't have the reflective qualities I was looking for. Once I closed the journal cover, I didn't feel I was getting any feedback. It also did not give me the transformative qualities that I was looking for. So one day, I walked into the art room and a teacher was painting. And I commented on how beautiful the painting was, and he said, "It's my reflective practice." And this light went off in my head. And I realized that just as I was thinking about my teaching in an analytical and logical way, I was also thinking about my reflective practice in that logical and analytical way. So I didn't have to be analytical to be reflective. I could be creative and expressive, and that's when I turned to poetry. I heard Naomi Shahid Nye speak at Orange County Community College, and she said that poetry was, quote, telling the truth by lying. Poetry is fiction. Poetry allowed me to tell my students stories in a way that nonfiction simply could not. Rather than focus on the factual event, I could write about the impact the event had on me as a human being and on my students. It also allowed me another important step in the reflection process that journaling did not. It allowed me to share my experiences with a wider audience. When I shared my poetry it took the power out of those awful events that happened to my students. It allowed me to emotionally empty myself, allowing others to hear and take up my burden. It allowed me to renew and refresh and become a better human being. As a result, I became a better, more joyful teacher. Bell Hooks writes, "To restore passion to the classroom, or to excite it in the classroom where it has never been, professors must find again the place of eros within ourselves and together allow the mind and body to feel and know desire. When eros is present in the classroom, love is bound to flourish," end quote. Poetry has allowed me to become more passionate, more relaxed, and a better human being. It allowed love to flourish in my classroom and in my life. So I'm going to share with you some of the poetry I've written as part of my reflective practice. Please keep in mind two things. They're not all finished works. They are, some of them still works in process. The other and most important is that they are works of fiction. Though all of them are based on real experiences, the names and individual characteristics of the children have been changed. They are truly, as Naomi Shihab Nye claims, telling the truth by lying. So, I'm going to start with one that's called Christmas Vacation. Don't touch them. There is no need to touch them. Do not tap them on the shoulder. Do not put your arm around them. Do not, under any circumstances, hug them. The lawyer is clear. The lawyer is always clear about rules and laws and lawsuits. But he is not clear about the boy in the last row of my classroom who lost his mother to cancer just before Thanksgiving. It is Christmas now. As the buses line up, I am wishing them happy holiday. The snow is falling like a Christmas card. The boy in the back of the classroom is the last to leave. His bottom eyelids are heavy with one tear each. "Can I hug you?" he asks. "Sure," I say, not thinking about rules or laws or lawsuits. All I am thinking is how he must long for his mother's arms. This is called The Kiss, and I included this because one of the things I really was focusing on is how teaching impacts my personal life, not just my life in the classroom. So this is called The Kiss. I had a baby once, a boy, who fit in the palm of my hand. He looked more like a fish or a pollywog. The hospital called him Baby A. His brother, Baby B, didn't make it out in one piece. I named Baby A Joshua John Michael, a horribly long and unimaginable name that only a young mother could come up with. I am no longer a young mother. I am old enough to be a grandmother, though I am not one. Today, a student just 14 years old kisses me on the cheek. It's a joke just to see my reaction. I put on my teacher face, telling him to stop clowning around and sit down. Later, in a bathroom stall, I hide away and cry. I'm not going to lie. For 35 years, I've been praying to a God I'm not even sure I believe in to be able to feel my son's kiss upon my cheek. He isn't exactly my son, but it's close enough. I'll take it. I'll take it. It's called Rainbow. She called herself Rainbow, frizzy hair, tie-dyed shirt. She wore a leg brace, a type of Velcro boot, thick bottom, and a line of lacing over her calf. Taller than most students, she would clomp down the hall in an uneven rhythm, like the bride of Frankenstein. After 3 months of clomping, I asked her when the boot would come off. She said she didn't know because her father didn't have enough money for her to go back to the doctor who prescribed it. While the boot exempted her from phys ed, it did not prevent her from making the mile walk from the school to the public library, where she would spend long hours waiting for her father to pick her up. Once I gave her a ride to the library and she refused to get out of my car. It took 10 minutes before I could coax her leg up onto the sidewalk. I drove away with the passenger door still open, stopping 2 blocks away to shut it. On teacher conference days, she would come to school anyway while her classmates slept in. The librarian would let her spend her days browsing the stacks and reading, until late one night the janitor found her asleep in the coat closet among the lost and found. The boot stopped being a brace and became a mystical prosthetic. She became Miss Havisham with a boot instead of a dress, waiting for something that would never happen. I still see her ghost on Broadway, her hair trailing behind her like waves of fire, with her boots striking the pavement in a defiant rhythm. This is called Ephemera, and it's dedicated to Jessica. Breastless, hipless, lank in only the way a 14-year-old can be, she slides in my classroom door, lifting chalk unseen, while I am getting ready for class. Each day she writes another number, 6:30, 6:14, 6:05. These descending numbers, her race day goal. On those legs as thin as cranes, We watched her run this failing school into sports headlines. She, this girl who scratched her arms during interviews and covered her mouth when she giggled, was what we needed. A few years later, she dies like we all want to die, in her sleep, her heart and dreams unbroken. She is the first in her graduating class to leave us this way. I'd like to say we will always remember her, legs pumping, heart racing, the finish line just in view. But we will all grow older, moving farther and faster from a static point in time from which she will never move. She, like the newspaper clippings describing her races, will just become ephemera. These aren't happy ones, I'm sorry. This one is still yet untitled. On good days, I sing along with the radio on my commute, jump on the elliptical when I get home, and eat salad for dinner. On bad days, I buy a lottery ticket, a pack of Pall Mall unfiltered, and smoke one behind the convenience store. There have been a lot of bad days lately. You know that little girl, the one from the special room who delivers pens to your door when you call the office for supplies? She looks like she's about 10 or 12, but she's really 16. She reaches out her hand while you say, "Thank you, Olivia." She never talks and you have no idea whether she is just too shy or simply can't. Olivia has been raped by her stepfather for years. They sent a police officer to her house, a man almost 2 feet taller than her, in a gray uniform with a gun at his hip. He reported back, "I can't get a straight answer out of her." Today, when I light the Pall Mall, the tobacco leaves a bitter taste. This is called loop. She loops the rope around the beam. How did she learn to tie that knot? The next day, I am expected to teach the 7 uses of the comma to a room with 1 empty chair. Call the office if you feel you need a break. On my lunch, I drive to the local convenience store, buy my first pack of cigarettes in 25 years, smoke in the car with the windows rolled up until I feel sick. This is Flinging Words, and it's for Mark. He's a poet now, a father of 2, but once he was my student in 11th grade English. He now stands at the podium shuffling papers, speaking gold. But no matter how hard I try to see him as a grown man, I remember the boy, small for his age, tough in the way small boys need to be. Itchy, too much testosterone in too little a space. I gave him poetry to read because he would finish his work before the other students. It was just a way to keep him occupied and out of trouble. He, of course, gives me credit for being the mentor I never was. I remember the day he took on that boy, the one who was repeating the grade once, maybe twice, that boy who shaves twice a day and should have gotten a factory job long ago. It started with words because what else do fights start with? Unevenly matched, I tried to rescue him, but he refused to be saved. Security arrived to unwrap the bigger boy's finger from the smaller's neck. Once freed, he lifted the orange and white dictionaries from a stack on my desk, and he flung them one at a time, aiming them at his retreating adversary. It appears that it really was in my classroom where he first learned to fling words. I just have 2 more. Do I have enough time for 2 more? This is called Poetry Day, and it's for Jessie. And it's one of the few things I'm allowed to do at my school for my students. We have a yearly Poetry Day where students can share their own poems or ones they love. So this is for Jessie. In the high school library, the girl in the tutu is standing behind the podium reading poetry. The rhythm of her breath, the shift of her feet gives way to her nervousness, her excitement. She has just jumped from a plane. In the first moment, the breath was sucked out of her. The sensation of falling is too much for her to handle. Then she opens her eyes, and it is wonderful. This is what being an addict must be like. This is the first hit that lets her know she will never be clean again. She will never be sober. She will come back to this place again and again. She will let poetry windburn her face. She will let poetry replace all her blood. And I'll finish with this. It's, you know, we have these meetings and the principal asks you a question and you have to get in committees and answer it. And the question was, what do your students need to learn more effectively? So this was my response to that. If the budget allows it, I need a meadow, preferably with uncut grass, wildflowers, and butterflies. If you can upgrade, I would need a stream running along the meadow. I would prefer a hot day. The children can take off their shoes, roll up their pants, and wade deep. Afterwards, we can lie in the meadow and dry ourselves. The children can look up and identify the shapes of the clouds for no extra cost to the school. Soon, they will ask the name of the bird that flies overhead. A butterfly will land, and one of them will laugh and want to know its name, too. If I could have them this way once, twice, or when the schedule allows, when the time is right, they will ask the other questions, the questions that turn their lives into journeys. Later, they will sit in hardback chairs, and the smell of the meadow will linger in their nose, and the trill of the cicada in their ear. Only then will they be ready to figure with pen and paper. But nothing will ever be as important as the day the orange and black butterfly lighted on their sleeve, and they pondered the pattern of infinity.
It's 8:44, and we have time to talk to Mariana.
Okay, you want to now?
Yes. Is that okay?
That's fine with me.
We can have questions at the end.
Okay.
Then maybe we can draw
That way we
connections.
give Carmen the exact amount of time.
Yeah.
I just love how you used love is bound to flourish. Because not only is it bound to flourish among your students and their writing, but that writing is creating a love flourishing within you for teaching, for continuing, for carrying on. Would anybody like to ask a question or make a comment about any piece?
Actually, I really appreciated the collection.
Thank you. It was hard to choose.
Yeah, it was a nice part of fresh air. I appreciated your use of imagery and the avoidance of cliches. And you know, I assume that the people to whom you dedicated the poems were your students.
They were my students.
But what I wanted to ask you, Mariana, was, and I also like the way you delivered it. I like the persona you assumed as you presented it. Can you tell us a little bit about your creative process?
Yeah. I think, you know, some people respond differently to things, and I usually respond creatively. And I still journal, and a lot of these poems come from the journal because it really starts, my poem starts with a feeling that I'm trying to get across about teaching, not necessarily the exact event, how it happened. We've had a lot of death and a lot of suicide at our school. So I think sometimes writing about that in the analytical way just doesn't work for me. I have to write in a way that I can put that sense of loss and, you know, in it. And I don't know if that answers the question, but I feel unsatisfied when I write, and I write a journal every day because I like to keep track about what happened, whether my students are progressing or not. But that's just not, sometimes at the end of the day, I still play, and, you know, I'm in a school where these events don't happen once a month, once a week. We're talking every single day. Something is just so horrifying, and I still need to get up and come to work the next day. So poetry is a way to get that out, so I know that I won't forget. Like, I really feel sometimes I'm going to become dehumanized. So poetry allows that I won't, because now that poem exists with the feeling that it's in the real world. And that was a long answer, and I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it's
Yes.
a great answer.
Mariana, thank you for your presentation. I'm truly thankful that this idea of now the educator has the opportunity to figure out where he or she fits in the entire experience. Because I know in the education field now, there's a lot more concern with technology and keeping students in the classroom, and making sure the institutions have what they need, but sometimes the very educator gets neglected. And so to have poetry, for example, as a place for the educator to know where he or she is in relation to everything that's going around, makes it just that more essential for self-care. And I was definitely pleased by the quotes that are shared here in the booklet. I just want to read Harper Palmer. If we want to improve the quality of college teaching, 1 million workshops on methodology will not be enough. Good teaching does not come from technique. It comes from the identity and integrity of the teacher. That was just very enlightening for me.
And what I struggled with is, so, you know, I was sitting in a study hall and a student came up and she told me about being raped over the weekend. So I needed to care for that. And then it's like, now go back into the classroom and teach.
Yeah.
And I, you know, that happens every day. There's a violent fight, now go back in the classroom and teach. You just had to feed somebody, now go back in the classroom and teach. You know, and it's always, poetry gave me the way to get that strength to be able to go back in the classroom and teach.
I like that you bring up the fact that Mariana mentioned reflective practice. There's a reflective therapy in that practice. But that was beautiful. Thank you, Mariana. Our next presenter is Carmencita, as I call her. Carmen Winchester Reed is presently employed by Montefiore Center, Women and Infants and Children program in the Bronx, New York. She's been with them for 15 years as a breastfeeding coordinator, health educator. She worked as an international board-certified lactation consultant from 2004 until last year, 2014. She earned an associate's in community and school health, a bachelor in dietetic food and nutrition, and a master's in science of education. Carmen has dedicated her life service to helping empower low-income women increase their awareness on the importance of providing breast milk to their infants to decrease health disparities and promote their wellness. Presently, Carmen is pursuing a PhD here at Union Institute and University. Her intellectual work focuses on human lactation, examining after-hours services in the hospital emergency room and urgent care centers, in addition to assess how to increase the initiation and duration rates of breastfeeding amongst low-income women. She is going to share some of her poetry with us that connects this work to how it affects her personally. Welcome, Carmen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thanking you to be here today. And I want to say special thanks to all the professors that actually empowered me to be at this place where I'm at intellectually. And so I'll just talk a little bit about the service that I do provide for the women in the Bronx. But first of all, I must say thanks to Mariana for presenting with me today. I don't know if you all know, but Mariana and I share the same birthday. And she actually told me that she's the bigger sister, so I appreciate that, Mariana. Okay, so my service that I do provide for the women in the Bronx, I don't know if you all know that the Bronx is, the South Bronx is considered the lowest, the poorest neighborhood within the whole United States of America. And so one of the things that happen is that we have a lot of health disparities in the community that I serve. And so one of the things that I actually try to do in empowering these women is to let them know that you can have a healthy start once the infants have a healthy start. And there can be changes within the community if they should try to abide by certain things. Now, I work for the WIC program, and one of the things that happen is that we do give, offer formula to these women. So individual will ask and say, so how is it that you're offering formula and then you're promoting breastfeeding? And one of the things that I will say to the women in that community is that if you can, at any point, breastfeed, I would suggest that you try to do a bit of that as long as you can, and then if you can't for whatever reason, then go ahead and give formula. So I'm not against formula, but I want to empower those women that they actually should think of the most optimal food for these infants. Another thing that I actually try to empower these women is to say to them, I'm always here. And the medical professionals are always here to assist you in whatever way that you possibly, we possibly can do it. And so I don't want you to feel that you're by yourself. However, one of the things that and that's the reason why I chose Union to be the university to continue my professional studies. We are allowed here to continue with within our speciality, whatever that we actually want to pursue. And so I chose here to do that because it allows me to broaden my horizon and at the same time providing services for the women that I serve. So one of the gaps that I looked into when I first came here is to say, if I'm offering services to these women during the day, and I'm telling them that this is the preferred way to feed your infant, during the night, when they can't get that assistant, what do? When they go to the emergency room or urgent care centers, and they're telling the doctors or the medical professionals, I need assistance in this area, and they're not able to get that assistant, then I'm defeating them. And so one of the things that I try to do is to put my studies where now I'm saying I'm going to try to see if we can fill that gap. This past semester, I took a series of 4 classes, and for me, they have empowered me so much that I've written these poems. And I would just like to share it. But more so, I would like to say thanks to Dr. Peep and Dr. Burns. You have inspired me this past semester. And so here are the poems that I wrote from them. The first one is called, Is It Reality or Illusion? From the ghetto I cry, from the ghetto I cry, from the ghetto I cry, with tears in my eyes, let my people go. You have psychologically embedded their thoughts that the bovine milk is better than theirs, that the bovine milk is better than mine. You tell them this, and you tell them that. The substitution is just like mother's milk, that the alternative is better than mother's milk. Now the children are dying from infectious diseases, including bacterial meningitis, diarrhea, necrotizing enterocolitis, and late-onset septic in preterm infant, to name a few. How can you truly rationalize this illusion when the children are dying, when the children are dying, when the children are dying? Through social construct, my children of the ghetto are trapped in a reality of marginalization, a ghetto of econicide, which affect their behavior in an actual sense. You fill my thought with illusion, so I can come to the conclusion that the bovine milk is better than theirs, that the bovine milk is better than mine. But children of the ghetto, arise from your slumber, arise from your sleep. This is not a deception, it is for real. Caring for the most vulnerable. There remains today a lack of care. One might just wonder in what spare. Throughout the nation, with those on call, there is a need for those most small. There is no doubt the call is there, both day and night, whenever where. One may ask, who will she need when one so tiny call for feed? When she's unable to provide, while latching will in fact divide. For from this point, the vulnerable cry, the call for care now must be tried. Remembrance. You are my sweetheart, the princess, the future queen, and the irresistible one. You were created during the seclusion of passionate love. You are the product of the phallus, and thus you were prudently carried for 9 months. Loving every moment when you were growing and moving inside of me. During the laboring process, the pain came in varying intensity, but amidst the stabbing contraction and the feeling of intense, eternal twisting, stabbing, and pulling and squeezing in my groin, I remained calm. You played tug of war with me for 39 hours, so I had to surrender to the agony for it to become bearable and for me not to feel like I was trapped within the midst of quicksand. Enthusiastically, I bore the excruciating pain and deliver you without anesthesia, since I did not want you to become lethargic upon your arrival. I wanted you to behave just like a princess with proper etiquette, showing grace under pressure. Now that you were no longer in the sterile cocoon that I have colonized you, and I have colonized you with my microorganism, I must continue my royal duty by extending my devotion and fulfill the desire of your every demand. I must supply you with liquid gold that will give you the superb richness in life and continue to supply you with the royal lineages as we are identical species. Now I must persist and continue to create the bond we have initiated, stuck around and embrace your skin with mine as the day we fuses. You reciprocated by embracing the union as you were in your natural habitat. You showed no psychological sign of being under significant stress at that moment when I gazed into your seductive and magnificent eye. Our soul connected, and instantaneously I know you were mine forever and that you are one of my eternal flame. Public breastfeeding. From my side a sound is heard. With this voice my heart does throb. I know from this my love will show. There is with me a child I know. I now will know what to do. My breast does feel it coming through. The child will know what it is my milk prepared for her to kiss. When from my heart the feel is there, my child and I together here. No matter others they may see, my child needs me regardless where. Disparity. In truth, disparity does so affect those in the realm of others' neglect. There will one day with suddenness come more than suffering within this tomb. When standing by from those who hurt, we one day will end in dirt. There must be care to free this plight, if you and I to do what's right. This too applies for those unable, as well as those who are unstable. Without us backing those in need, we should remember why indeed that there is suffering every day while we continue to watch it play. Breastfeeding choice. There was a time not long ago, the choice for infants seems to flow. One time breast milk or formula, it does not matter, for both would go. Science proves milk from the breast. This leaves no choice but do what's best. One keeps in mind the child is fine, when for the breast the child does pine. While for the mother with her supply, her own well-being will she apply. Thus giving forth for her own milk, as well the child with the proper milk. In truth, there is this reliable fact. Both mother and child will long react to lengthening the day God has in mind with breast milk as the way in kind. Breastfeeding reflection. The healthcare system needs some change to deflect the obstacle in its range. There are so many complications, more than logic for all its patients. Training in science to self-casualty, so change the system in line with reality. One change the system as submitted, a nutritional policy one time omitted. The time is now, the change take place. breastfeeding that's logic in that space. One more chance, the space must eat. Nighttime service for those in need. Femininist. And it came to pass as she was walking, there were perchance a Lord thus talking. His eyes and did perceive her presence. He with his mind didn't mind her essence. She walked on without attention. Who art he to know attraction? When I am free, he shall know me. He will one day bow down for me. One day soon he will perceive. There is no way he will deceive. Does he determine when to shower? I will when ready to perform desire. To whom it may concern. There was a day, a while ago, when from the blue a child was born. There came a mother on the scene. With crying eyes, she made it known. This child is mine and must be fed. Then along came another with a bottle shown. This child is mine, for this I'm sure. But from which mom the milk will come. It is known breast milk is best. For when the child cries, the milk will flow. It replaces bottles and teats off the list. As one might just wonder why this is so, it come to know how the child will grow. A child that is flourishing into motherhood. There come a time when one sees light, when in their present come a sight, an infant of both so wonderful. There is no doubt that both do care, that what they feed her will be fair, a child of both so wonderful. The fare will be for several months, that she will thrive beyond these months, a toddler of both so wonderful. Since fare is chosen with instruction, one must know of her construction, a girl of both so wonderful. It is important breast milk is known, according to what science has shown, a teen of both so wonderful. Breastfeeding is for those who dare. One can be thankful that they do care, a lady of both so wonderful. One day the child will soon rejoice. Breastfeeding too will be her choice, a mother of both so wonderful.
Carmen, we have time for at least one more and still have time to talk to you. So you can
I can
choose.
stop now.
No, let's at least hear one more, right? They're so amazing, yes. Very, very nice. Let's hear one more.
Okay. The mirror effect. Where is my family, the one I count on? Where have they gone while I'm alone? Where is the father, the one of my child? Where has he gone while remaining alone? What of my child? Do none of them care? Do I alone the burden I bear? Where I am now, the place is bare. What of my child? Do other not care? There is another whom others don't know. She will go on with the mother in tow. She is the one whom others don't see, the one in the mirror, whose image is she. There is no day the child will not wait for her breast to give milk regardless her state. Where now is the family, the one of her child. They too must awaken before one goes wild. So let's get together and do what we can. She is our own mother, our daughters are clan.
The obvious connection of milk, life, parent, child is pretty powerful in your poetry. I'd also like to say, what a great delivery. Each poem was delivered with such passion and such energy. We'll open it up, open the floor. We have at least 8 minutes to talk to Carmen.
I'm wondering if you share your poetry, maybe with the women with whom you're working or other public spaces?
Okay, so one of the things that happened is, for me, I have these moms that sometimes comes in and a bit frustrated at times. And so one of the things that I actually do is I actually try to uplift them as much as possible. So that's how I wrote the poetry. But I've just written them this past semester. So I've not gotten the chance to share it with any of the mothers. But one of the things that I'm planning on doing is sharing it with the state, New York State Health, Department of Health. And so to see how we can actually distribute it to the mothers, that, you know, it can empower them to do so. Another thing that I plan to do is with the hospital, with the breastfeeding coordinator, try to share that also. So like World Breastfeeding Month, which is always August, that we can share them, you know, that it can empower women.
That would be powerful.
Thank you for a very powerful delivery. I
Thanks.
especially appreciated the poem with the colonizing themes. I forgot the name of it, but it was just very rich. Your co-presenter, Mariana, had stated that her poetry was a way to self-reflect on some of the harsher issues that she encountered in the classroom. And I was wondering if, what was this process like for you? Was it is your poetry political? What's the...
Somewhat political, I think one is.
Right, yeah. Did you, like Mariana, write them in order to, as a means of reflecting, a catharsis maybe, to help you through the process of understanding or making sense of some of your experiences with necrotizing enterocolitis?
Okay, so one of the things that happened is I had Dr. Burns' class this past semester, and he gave us a challenge. And so, and also Dr. Raymond gave me a challenge that I had to do a presentation this semester. And so one of the things, one of the things that I did, I tried to, you know, say to myself, so in what way can I really present, make a presentation, and at the same time being myself? You know, reflecting the job that I do, because it's of such importance. And so when I told Dr. Burns that I was going to do poems, and I actually said I'm going to do 12 of them, I think I was over my head when I said it. Because when I first started, I said, oh my God, what did I get myself in? But eventually, you know, as creative leader and also with Dr. Peep's class, thank you so much. You, you know, as the faculty, I wanted to let you all know that you have pulled something that was deep inside of me, and you have pulled it out, and that's the reason why I was able to actually do it. So my creative process, you know, is just to reflect back on how, you know, speaking with these women and seeing the difficulties that they have, along with all the readings and everything else, I was able to do it, so. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just blown away by the powerfulness of your poetry, and I'm just impressed with how royal the readings come across. I think whenever we think about the miracle of birth, I don't think anyone will look at birth and not think that it's something miraculous and something to be celebrated. But for some reason, after birth, there's a shaming of women when it comes to public breastfeeding and comes to the point of nourishing children, and that royalness is lost. And in one of your poems, it really extended, you know, the birth process beyond just the miracle birth, but to the importance of the next step of feeding your children and making sure that they have the highest quality nutrition possible, and that's the natural nutrition from the mother. And I wish that people could hear that and really understand that this is a continuation of that miracle, that a woman's body continues to provide outside of the womb for their children, and that it's not something that's shameful. It's something that's powerful. It's something that's beautiful. It's something that should be celebrated, and it's anyone should ever be shamed for. And so I just want to congratulate you on the beautiful work, and I hope that New York and the rest of America and the world can hear what you bring.
Thank you so much. And that was what my intention was, for to empower these women. I mean, having seen all the health disparities, and as Joanne said, necrotizing enterocolitis is one of the diseases that really impact on premature infants. And to see, you know, what it does, the death of the cells, because of the fact that infants, these premature infants, they already actually have that immune factors that is already compromised. And because of the fact that women are not giving their colostrum, which helps to protect the gut flora, you find that they end up going through this horrendous illness, and it's 50% of, we lose 50% of these premature infants due to that. And so to see that, you know, I want to impact that, you know, make that known to these women, that it can have a positive effect if you only just do it for a few, even for a few months, even for a few days, to let those infants get that gut flora to thrive. So yes, I did try to use that also to impact on how I write the poetry, actually.
We have time for one more question. Is that Dr. Raymond?
Yeah, so I'm familiar, you know, with your work, because Carmen and I work together, but this is, you know, a totally different entryway into your work, and so it's really powerful and beautiful, and I'm so glad that I got to hear it. And I was wondering if you have thought about, you know, doing anything around having the women themselves write their poetry. So I'm thinking about your topic, and you know, a lot of you may know some stuff about Carmen's topic, but part of it is about how to get at the lack of support for women, despite all of the support. So this sort of after-hour support. And when I was listening to you, you know, the words that were sort of coming through to me were this frustration and pride and love and vulnerability and courage. And I wondered, you know, if you've thought about that. You know, is there a way to get something, you know, not to get, you know, to give voice to women's experience in a way that we're not hearing it otherwise in those moments when they're not able to get that and they're struggling with this desire to care for their child and really provide for them, and they're you know, so courageous and so, you know, get frightened at the same time at 3 in the morning when they can't do it.
Exactly, and so that's where actually my focus is trying to, I'm gearing my focus on that. Because one of the things that happen is that in the mornings, that's when I actually experience that frustration from them. And then, you know, they'll go to the emergency room or urgent care centers and they'll get a prescription for formula, and they'll come back with tears in their eyes and they're saying to me, I don't think I'll be able to breastfeed, and they know that that's the best way. And so the work that I'm doing actually is trying to get, to eliminate that and for them to really get the support that they actually can get. One of the things, again, that I am planning to do is, because the more that they see that you're listening to them, and I think through this poetry they will see that I'm listening to what, you know, what they're saying to me, and their fears and everything else, and I think that that will help to empower them. So overall, I'm just going to try to see how I, as their, you know, because they look on me as their leader in breastfeeding, especially those low-income women that comes to the WIC program. And I'm going to try to see in what way that I really can empower them to do what they feel in their art that they need to do.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank
Carmen. This is a beautiful thing for me because this is a part of Carmen that I don't know, and I've known her for 3 years. And I love that you used the word regal. What word did you use? Royal. It did come across that beautifully. We have about 3 or 4 minutes before the next presentation. If you'd like to grab some water or change rooms, whatever you need to do, please feel free to stop by and talk to Mariana or Carmen. Thank you again. Beautiful job.
Thanks. You ran the panel very well.
No, you're coming.
Thank you for coming up early. Color 15, we're the best. Hello, Sue. How are you?
That's not my definition. That's not.
I'm going to Ghana
You know, everything. Because you know what I was thinking about, you know, we've started and one of the so one of the projects that right now is so we had a conversation inside that we're gonna start looking at modern basically the ultimate goal is so right now we're going to start looking at I was just thinking about it. So honestly, I'm going to take somebody ready. You did a great job. I sat down there, tears were running down. Oh my
Good to see you. Good to see you. All right.
Good.
Yeah, the first one is powerful too. I really don't.
I don't know if Jeremy's a star.
There you are. Hey, Marty. Is Wendy here?
She is.
Okay, cool. Is she here? Because Greta was sick, but Lawrence was able to keep the whole time.
You could do the full 55 minutes.
That's cool. No, I'm the speaker for this one. I don't know if I go first or if...
Do you?
I don't have a preference at all. If Wendy wants to go first, that's cool by me.
Trust me, I will be very brief.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's really great.
I don't know if you can do it.